There we go. Welcome, everybody. Hi, my name is Tony, and welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. What'd you think about that new trailer? Just dropped at 10:30 local time here at Pacific. Used it as the intro today on the episode. What'd you think? I've seen a couple folks watch it already. There's a little bit of chatter about what it looks like and sort of the feedback already. But let me know. Do you want me to use that as the intro for the live stream? That is my intention over the next little while. And of course, as we get more sort of creative stuff made, sort of introduce it as we go. So what do you think as we enter into the second phase of Star Trek New Worlds? But if you're joining us for the very first time and you're wondering, Tony, what in the world is Star Trek New Worlds? It is a turn-based strategy game that we play online here with you using the magic of YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook Live. We bring it to you over the internet airwaves, so to speak, show you the map using Vassal, and we play the whole game using the Federation and Empire rule set as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. This whole thing exists in the Starfleet universe, or at least I should say is inspired by it. As if for those of you who have been following us and have seen the elements, the factions, the gameplay is driven by the Starfleet universe, but the actual story, the narrative, the evolving dynamic and drama that is occurring in this game is all driven by the players. It is a completely bespoke, unique, and original piece of work, so to speak, in that the content that we create is all driven by us players, role-playing with each other, interacting with each other, fighting wars, and engaging in this 4X gameplay. So if that's something that you kind of like, then please consider joining us here on the subscriber count, which I will praise. This is such an interesting name. Our latest subscriber, Zombie Tots Eater, our latest subscriber. Thank you, Zombie, for joining us here on the channel. Thank you for joining and being part of our community. If you, like me, are a caffeine or coffee enthusiast, and you can't live your life day to day without a little bit of that elixir of life in your body, then please consider supporting us using that little link below. The coffee link allows you to donate a little bit of buying us a coffee in real time, or if you are more the monthly subscriber type, there are tiers for that as well. But if coffee is not your game and Patreon is more your style, there are also links for that in the description to this video. But I digress. Let's get on with what we're talking about today. What's going on, Tony? And what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about the ISC plugging a hole. Is that ink I see, or is that just the hydrants running away? The gang is getting together. You might have gotten that from the thumbnail, in the sense of factions are forming, teams are being built, so to speak. We'll talk about that. And of course, the Turn 60 reveal. Now, all sorts of interesting things that are going on in the game. Let's go to the map and introduce you to the plugging of the hole and the spreading of the ink, as I'll call it. So just before we jump in, I keep doing this mistake every time of not acknowledging the EP and fleet summaries before I get going. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to jump into the chat and say hello to everybody, and then we'll jump into what's going on the border. So let's start with EP, and of course, for some reason, I seem out of practice. I can't even find the EP counter. There you are. All right, so EP. Ladies and gentlemen, the economies of the world in this galactic union are the Carnivon at 42, the Federation at 38, only 4 EP between them. The Gorner at 39.5. The Hydrants have fallen below 40. They're now at 38.5. The ISC have risen to the 40 count, but as we've discussed many times, there is a minor faction that is throwing off that number. But generally speaking, let's consider it to be 37 or 36.5, as the case may be. We've got the Klingon faction at 45. The Lyrans at 38.5, 38.5. The Remans at 37.5. The Romulans at 38.5. And the Tholians at 43. Dun, dun, dun. So very interesting to see that we've got 3 factions that are healthily above the 40 mark. One sort of on the nose, but as we know with the ISC, that the numbers are a little deceiving. Tholians, can you get your act together and get that planet integrated into your economy? Come on now. So very interesting and funny to see. Let's check out fleet cap real quick as we see the military strength of all our different factions. I'm just going to expand this a little bit. Come on now, be nice. There we are. Okay, so the Carnivon have a total of 63 ship equivalents. They are at 154, 279 as a split. They are, we're going to get to them. They've got some interesting sort of activity happening. Very much sort of in the spirit of I think of what I was talking about before in previous live streams, but we'll get into that in a moment. Nonetheless, 63 ships they've got floating around there, and 154. They've crested the 150 mark as far as total attack factors, and that's significant. The Federation have 41 ship equivalents. They did that last stream, and they've popped over 100 to 108. The Gorn, with 36 ship equivalents, have a 74-147 split. They are not growing all that quickly necessarily, but as we can see, when it comes to the total ship counts, they're sort of at the bottom of the barrel. What will happen when and if they get into MTech, I'm not sure, but their Y ships are certainly better than their W ships, and they're starting, or they were starting, to build some of those. The ISC, oh my goodness. Well, sorry, I jumped the Hydrons, excuse me. The Hydrons at the Sweet 69 at 163, 275 split. So 69 ship equivalents, 163. Very interesting considering that the ISC now at 74 ships. So they officially have surpassed the Hydrons in total ship count. Now, granted, there is, I feel like I'm about to sneeze here in a second. There is this minor faction that has, excuse me, big sneeze. Okay, yeah, there is this minor faction that has a number of ships, and so we can detract from that. But, sniff, sniff, I say. Let's find that third reserve fleet from the ISC, just so I can find out exactly how many ships they have. They have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they have 7 ships. So they are 60. I gotta sneeze again. Excuse me. They are at 67. Excuse me, ship equivalents to the 69. So they are just below the Hydrons in total ship count. But 227 to 334, they are head and shoulders above the Hydrons when it comes to attack and defense factors. So very, very interesting. The Klingons are at 54. There is a slow incremental increase in ship count, but nothing really all that significant. The thing to note, though, is that the Klingons are at a 138 to 18 split. So they are by a significant amount below that 150 mark, which is, I would consider a significant milestone in the sort of stratification of the fleets in the game. But we shall see how that all works out. The Lyrans, 50 ships. They have 50 ship equivalents with a 111 to 28. So very interesting that they are so close to the Klingons, by example, in their ship total ship numbers, but the delta, or the difference between the total attack factors and defense factors, is interesting. That the defense factors are so close, but the attack factors aren't. So that just speaks to sort of the kinds of ships that the Lyrans have in their fleet. The Remans, oh my God, they are going to get to 100. They are at 82 ship equivalents, so still head and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to total ship count. 224. 224 to 290. Now, this is really interesting to note. Take a look at the Reman ship count, 82, which is, you know, certainly above the 74, which is just the number of ships that are on the map for the ISC. And look at the total attack factors, 227 for the ISC, 224 for the Remans. Until recently, or up until now, the Remans have been the biggest hammer in the game. Biggest, baddest, strongest foe. But the ISC have the potential to surpass that sort of position in the game, which is very interesting considering the developments that have come down the pike, which we will talk about in a moment. Right. So we have the Remans at 82, 224, 290 split. The Romulans at almost half the number of ships at 44 with a 118, 192 split. So interesting to see the number. Yeah, it's so interesting. The number of ships and the so they're firmly below that 125 milestone when it comes to attack factor. So they're definitely sort of, I would say, not the lowest tier, because of course we're just about to talk about the Tholians with the lowest attack factors in the game, but the Romulans are certainly sort of, we'll call them mid-tier, mid-lower tier when it comes to total attack factors. And anyone hovering around that 100 mark, between, I would say, 100 and 125 at total attack factors, is in that ballpark. And if you're above 150, that puts you in the sort of the top end, so to speak. And there's about half the factions are sort of in that ballpark, with the Remans and the ISC, again, head and shoulders above everybody else. The Tholians, 48 ship equivalents, so more than the Roms, but half, like essentially half the total attack factors. Very, very interesting. Now, we know the Tholians, their ships are terrible, just generally when it comes to attack factors, and certainly early era. But as this game continues, hiccup, be on the lookout for how that changes. So very interesting to see. Let's quickly run into the chat and say hi to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the show. Let's go from the top. Eugene, first in the room, early, eager, love to see it. Saw the new campaign trailer, he says. Very nice videos. I'm sure it takes a lot of time and talent. I'm looking at you, Paul. Congratulations to the ones that acquired the skill. It's really the person who's creating all those wonderful CGI animations is Paul, the ISC player. I just edit it and put it together, and to be fair, my editing skills are not the greatest in the world, but I do what I can. We've got Jim and Bill in the house. Paul, our CGI artist. Eugene adds in 5 minutes to go, and the week's wait will come to an end. Looking forward to the update. Hoping that someone will capture a Juggy ship, exterminate the computer crew, and explore new technologies. If only we could capture those Juggernaut ships, that would be really interesting. I wonder if anyone is really going to sort of leap into that challenge, Eugene. We shall see. Chuck is in the house. What's Chuck saying? After suffering a week of 90+ temperatures, I finally got my air conditioner. Me and Peaches are now nice and comfortable. Well, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest in North America, it is nothing like that here. It is, shall we say, overcast and cool, and hence my vest, sort of keeping me warm as we go. Again, Lord Lawless. Hello, Lord Lawless. Welcome to the show. We've got George Duffy in the house. And somewhere in here, I feel like Daniel, our GM, is floating around. By the way, big thank you to our GM. He was up until 2 a.m. in the morning, finishing up turns and getting things sorted out for today's live stream. So big kudos to him. This shows the kind of sort of like commitment and dedication that not only our players, but our GM have in the game to make sure that we sort of maintain some semblance of a cadence here. Because after all, there is a tempo, there is a time, and we've got to get these things out to be able to feed your need for updates, Eugene, and of course, get this game going on pace. One of the key things about that is that our players, of course, get their turns in on time, respond to emails, and do all that kind of stuff, because it's the back and forth that slows things down as much as anything else. And of course, as we're talking about entering into phase 2 of this game, things are going to get more exciting and more sort of dynamic as that goes on. Speaking of which, I should probably just quickly address the phase 2 and why phase 2. So this is the turn 60 reveal. We are at turn 60 going into this week. And in the past, in previous games that I've played, normally they have ended in one way or another around the 120 turn mark. So just from the numbers, so to speak, we've reached that milestone of like getting into the midpoint of the game. Now, there's another aspect to that as well, which is when we look at the map, and I'll pull up a version of the map that allows me to take a look here. Let's see here. Okay. So my wife's just dropping off my dog right now, if you can hear that in the background. So if you can see this map, I know, big white space. If you can see that map over there, you'll notice the borders are clearly defined now. We've got this general shape that's sort of manifested itself across the map, and we're all sort of, to a certain degree, racing to the center. Now that we've sort of established these borders, factions are starting to form. As per the map or the thumbnail that you saw, you can see that here in the bottom corner of the map, we have the Gorn, the Romulan, and the Klingon. Now, as a role-playing aspect, the Gorn, the Romulans, and the Klingon have just recently agreed to a three-way mutual defense treaty, which it's not a full alliance, which some of the other players have engaged in, but it is nonetheless a sort of a way to sort of protect ourselves from being attacked by other folks. So in a role-playing aspect, news of that will hit the streets, so to speak, shortly. But for you all to be able to see what's going on here, there is a dialogue and exchange between the Gorn, the Romulan, and the Klingons, and we have agreed to a three-way mutual defense pact, fundamentally against each other, so to speak, but also against potentially outside attacks, and certainly creates a stronger relationship for all of us to be able to defend off bad actors. You've got what has been sort of implied as a sort of alliance between the Tholians, or Big Red on the far west there, Blue Federation, and the Yellow Lyrans. They've effectively become a faction unto their own because of how they are playing nice together. So they are playing nice together. It's sort of unofficial. I don't know if there's any kind of mutual agreement there to come to each other's aid in the event of bad things. However, they're not attacking each other. They're being nice to each other, and there's no border disputes among them. So for the purposes of sort of cutting up the map, it's fair to say that they are sort of a faction unto their own. Recently announced within the game, the Remans and the ISC, as we just went over with Fleet Cap, the two biggest factions when it comes to military in the game, have become an alliance. That logo, that circle sun moon thing that you saw on the thumbnail, the Reman player Dell came up with as a depiction of their alliance. So they are allied, and they will be working together to fend off all oncomers, such as the Hydrons. So ironically, the Greens have come together. The Green Hydrons and Carnivon have effectively allied. They have announced an alliance in the game, and as we'll go through the map, they are certainly working together in some way, shape, or form to be able to sort of drive a certain outcome forward. Now, was it the Hydron Carnivon alliance that created the Reman ISC alliance? Maybe. It's certainly that creation of that alliance has sort of cemented a need, a desire for other folks to sort of play nice together, because if you're not worried about attack from one side, you can focus in on another, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to the Hydrons and the Carnivons, they can certainly concentrate out. Same thing with the Remans and the ISC as well. It would seem as though the Federation, Tholians, and Lyrans are doing something similar, and so on and so forth. So, you know, that game that everyone's playing, so to speak, is one of those things that's kind of mapping out. It'll be very interesting to see how this evolves going forward. But I digress. Let's get into the exciting news of what is going on the border. I can already see the chat. Oh, look at that. Bill. Tony is building the B4. Bill, not the BAFTA. Not the BAFTA, but the B4. Very, very interesting. Yeah, so I'll share a little role-playing aspect. When we get to the Klingons, I'll share a little role-playing aspect of what's going on there. And for those of you who are sort of in tune with the stories that are going on in the game, you might be able to sort of follow along as we go. But without further ado, let's get to the map and the exciting stuff that is happening on the border between our various factions. So, as I mentioned before, the Remans and the ISC have formed an alliance. Let's start with the Remans and their juggernaut problem, which we can see right here. So the juggernauts came out of this artificial wormhole, and we're heading in a sort of westerly direction. Now, The concern was that Cerberus Fleet had been moving to engage them. Would they be able to stop them? It seems as though the Juggernauts have moved towards Cerberus Fleet, so one way or another, Cerberus Fleet is going to engage them next turn or during turn 60. So it'll be very interesting to see how this sort of evolves and the battle that occurs. As a reminder of what is going on here, the Juggernaut Fleet, and this is Juggernaut Home Fleet, is, oh, wait a minute. I am wrong. It would seem that the Remans have already engaged the Juggernaut Fleet. Oh, very interesting. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, total change of the story and the narrative here. Okay, so it seems as though Cerberus Fleet has engaged the enemy. And as we can see, for those of you who don't remember, the Juggernaut Fleet had, and of course, I'm just seeing this all real time, first time right here, right now. So, what we know is that the Juggernaut Fleet had a CA, which is what's still there now. They had a CL, which was a straight 8 ship, 8 attack, 8 defense. It had 2 destroyers and 3 frigates. Now, those ships were incredibly difficult to deal with, but they were a big problem. What looks like has happened is Cerberus Fleet engaged them, and as you can see, has crippled 5 destroyers and 1 frigate. So they've crippled their KF-4s, which are their destroyers, and 1 frigate. It would seem as though the Juggernauts retreated because there is more than enough still in that fleet to be able to kill that CA, and the CA is the only ship left. I have a feeling the Juggernauts tried to retreat and that the Cerberus Fleet caught them on the way out and probably destroyed any crippled ships as they were trying to retreat. So the only ship that is remaining is the CA. Interesting to note here, because the Juggernauts, because of the faction that they will move first. Will they be able to move back into and transit through their artificial gravity well or wormhole, or will Cerberus Fleet be able to catch them? Interesting to note. One way or another, I don't think it matters too much because very clearly the Juggernauts are going to lose this fight. They want to, most likely, they want to retreat. Will there be an opportunity for the Remans to catch them and destroy them completely? And is there any advantage to that? Maybe if they can capture that ship, which it doesn't look like they'll be able to just because they don't have a commando ship or anything like a prime team to be able to try and capture that Juggernaut ship. But if they could, wouldn't that be interesting? Going back to Eugene's point. So very interesting to see that Hammer Fleet, the hammer has dropped and has caused a little bit of a pain train to run over the Juggernaut faction. Very interesting to see. Now, as we've seen that, let's just take a look at a couple other fleets around there. There is Prometheus Fleet. I'm wondering if there was any interaction with any other. Oh, Prometheus Fleet is virgin, you might say, fresh and new. We've also got New Fleet. Let's take a look at New Fleet. Reman New Fleet. Oh, dear. Now, Reman New Fleet had previously dealt with a monster, so they were already beat up and battered. So I expect this is just their working towards getting to this YDK to be able to repair. Once New Fleet is repaired, interesting to note their proximity to, like I keep saying, these juicy resources on the Lyran border. Now, I don't know whether the Lyrans and the Remans are already chit-chatting amongst themselves and have sorted out what they are or are not going to do. Very interesting to see. One thing to note, if the Remans have allied with the ISC and their intention is to help them with the Hydran battle or the Hydran sort of encounter, chances are they're not going to want to pick a fight with the Lyrans as well. I mean, even though the Reman Navy is huge, that might just be a bridge too far, a little bit too big to fit in your mouth. We'll see. Very interesting to see. I still think there's a threat of something like that happening. But of course, if they were going to realistically do something like that, certainly they would need to sort of build out a more robust infrastructure bases and things like that along the border if they were really, really going to attack the Lyrans. So probably not something that's going to happen in the short term, but, you know, just saying. All right, let's scroll down and take a look at what's going on here. Very interesting to note. Look at the fact that we have now a YDK in the neutral zone between these two factions. Now we know that, of course, there's an alliance between these two, but very interesting to see that there is a YDK here. Why a YDK, not just a base? I don't know, but certainly it provides them the ability to, from a layered defense perspective, provide support to the ISC. If the Hydrons were to somehow push past and get into ISC space, they could, the Remans that is, use this base as a, obviously as a repair point to be able to affect repairs and sort of support the ISC. Now, this KT4, which I've got my cursor hovering over here, is a tug. And it will most likely be building a base, assuming supply 3. This is 3 hexes away from that base. They're going to build a base here and possibly one down in this area as well. And then once they've done that, then they'll sort of be on the front line in one way or another. So it looks as though the Remans are building their own supply network into ISC space. So interesting to see how these alliances are cross-pollinating over each other's territory. So they're going to build these bases, provide supply, and potentially move into and beat up sort of other folks. So interesting to see. Yeah. R&D team. Shared R&D. I'm just going to take a quick sip of a caffeine. Speaking of which, if you feel like sending a coffee our way, coffee link is just over there. Don't be shy. There we go. Okay, let's go into the ISC. So a couple things that are interesting here. Before we get right down to the border, I'm just going to take away the ships for a sec so we can sort of see things a little bit more clearly. One of the interesting things to note, just from a sort of geography, is for the longest time there has been this very clear fog of war line or wall between not only the Remans, but certainly between the Hydrons and the ISC. Now, you can see here there's a couple of breaks in that now. I mean, the Hydrons explored this area over by Tango 20, 21, Sierra 21, by this YDK here. And, of course, there was the initial point of breach, if you want to call it that, which was right here. And so that is, as we might see in real-life circumstances, bridges, for those of you who are in the know, and or vectors of attack are really important. So being able to understand and appreciate that you have angles of attack or ways to get into, enemy's territory is really important. Here, we've got the main sort of bridge, which has been this area here, and then this other opening that has occurred. Now, because it's only a 1 hex difference or a 1 hex barrier, there's a lot of opportunity, depending on what's going on, for the Hydrons to open up. Boom! A new donation from the Juggernauts. Apparently, the Juggernauts are loving all the fighting and the conflict. So thank you very much. Caffeine from the Juggernauts. Appreciation. I'll take a sip in celebration. Thank you. Who knew that the AI appreciated caffeine? Who knew? So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here for the Hydrons to open up more vectors of attack, and because, as you can see, there's not a lot of base infrastructure on this far western reach of the ISC, it's kind of vulnerable. Kind of what I was saying about the Lyrans with those juicy resources. Same thing's happening here with the ISC. Now, let's bring the ships back and paint the picture. So, as we move over to the big hole, shall we say, we've got a couple of interesting things that have occurred. First of all, we've got 4 different fleets, or a large contingent of ISC ships that have sort of plugged the hole. Now, how can you say that they've plugged the hole, Tony? Again, I'll take away the ships for a sec. So you have 4 ships, or 4 fleets rather. We'll go into what are in those fleets in a second, but they've positioned themselves right here. Now, because of the fact that the fog of war hexes limit the space that you can sort of transit through, they have reaction range to any of the hexes passing them. So for the Hydrants to try and sneak past them in some way, shape, or form is going to be difficult, to say the least, and probably unlikely. So we'll just see how this goes. But they've got their fleets positioned on this yellow hex here, which is a resource they've reclaimed, and the reaction range that they have is going to make it very difficult to get through. In addition, there were 2 fleets here, and as we can see, there is now an ISC fleet here. So Justice, let's bring up the ISC fleet so we can kind of talk about this a little bit more. Yeah, I'll put that there. So Justice Fleet, where's Justice? Justice is just 1 YCL, which is fine, no big deal. But that YCL is within extended reaction range to the YDK, meaning that everything at the YDK can respond to assist Justice Fleet if need be, if stuff comes through there. If you want to know more about reaction range, then please check out our New Worlds playlist, and you will find the reaction video. It's got a picture of Shatner as Kirk screaming into the screen. It's talking about reaction range and how reaction movement works in this game. So if you want to know more about that, check that out. But effectively, the extended reaction range of the YDK will support Justice Fleet if need be. And as you can see, there's 2 frigates, 3 destroyers, and a tug, and Truth Fleet. Now, Truth Fleet is a CA 3 DDs, and a crippled DD. Interesting to note here that because the ISC get first move, they have initiative, their YDK can repair both of these crippled YDDs that are here, which effectively puts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 destroyers, 2 frigates, and a YCA at this base, not to mention anything else that they would build and send forward. So very, very interesting. Wow. Okay. So let's take a look at these 4 fleets that have plugged the hole. So there's Order. Let's see here. Order. There's Order Fleet and Providence Fleet. And what else? Providence, Enforcement Fleet, and Integrity Fleet. Oh, wow. Okay. So let's go from top to bottom. Enforcement Fleet has 6 YCLs and a CC. I'm going to guess that 5 destroyers and 2 marshal teams. So not nothing. Integrity Fleet has a crippled DD, which once there's an opportunity, should get the bug out of dodge. Another 2 DDs, 2 tugs, not 1 but 2 tugs. Another CL and a CA. The Order Fleet has 4 CLs, a commando cruiser, and a CC, and the big kahuna, Providence, has the Dreadnought, 2 CAs, no, 1 CA with a marshal team, and 5 CLs and 2 DDs. So my back of the napkin math here with 5, 4, it's another 5, so that's 10, 16. Oh my God, 16 YCLs. Now, why is that such an imposing number? So 16 YCLs. They are sort of the equivalent, in all effect, they're equivalent to the cruisers that the Hydrants have. Now you add in the DDs here. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so they've got 9 DDs. So between the CLs and the DDs, not including the command ships, there's more offensive firepower right there than most of what the Hydrants can bring to the table, just based on what the Hydrants have built up to this point, Vols and cruisers. And this is sort of like a challenge of the Y era for the Hydrants, is their ships don't have a lot of punch. That will change as techs advance, but it doesn't just change for the Hydrants, it also changes for the ISC. One of the strengths of the ISC, their ships might cost more, but man, they pack a wallop. So that's what's going on here. Now, as a comparison, let's look at what the Hydrants have in the area. They've got new and expeditionary fleets. So, oh dear. Okay, so Expeditionary Fleet. Oh, yes, a lot easier to manage. Thank you, Jim. Let's put this over my head just so it's a little bit easier to see. And, oh, God, there's so many other fleets here. Okay, so let's go new fleet and Expeditionary Fleet, at least initially. New fleet. There we go. There we go. New fleet, Expeditionary Fleet, and then there's a bunch of stuff on the YDK. We'll talk about that in a moment. So in close proximity to the behemoth or the cork that is plugging the hole for the ISC, you've got two YDNs. So important because not only they're heavy hitters, but they're a command platform. They can control 10 ships above and beyond themselves. You've also got 3 YCCs and, of course, the classic chaff, which is the Vols. So there's 7 Vols in these 2 fleets. Now, when we look around at the other ships as well, we've got the Hydrants with they have a tug and a couple Vols over here. They've got one, so the W era tug and a Vol there. And then they've got probably a number of Vols here as well. So 2 Vols, another DN on the YDK with a CC and a tug. So lots of tugs and lots of Vols. But what's interesting to note is that even when you add in all these Vols, we're just barely over double digits. And if you think about what the ISC have, they have like mid double digits, like in the teens for their YCLs. And they've got 9 DDs, which are a pretty decent ship, not to mention more coming down the pipe. Now let's take a quick look at some of these other Cobalt, Zinc, and Home Fleet. Okay, so Hydron Home Fleet. Oh, that's not insignificant. Hydron Metal Fleets. Zinc and Cobalt. Okay, there we go. All right. So there's a lot of stuff on the screen. Let's focus on the big ticket items, which right now, so we've got Zinc and Cobalt, which nothing really significant there. Zinc has a YCC, and the Cobalt has basically a W era survey ship, so nothing too exciting. Let's get rid of that just because it's noise. Let's focus on Home Fleet. Again, Home Fleet is on the YDK here. So it has 4 YCCs. Now, why is that important? For the Hydrons, YCCs are very expensive to build. They have to build a GRN, which is their normal cruiser, which is a 3.6 ship, and then they have to upgrade that to a YCC. Now, I can't remember exactly. I think it might be 2 EP. To convert the GRN to the YCC, which makes it a 4.6. What's important about the 4.6 is the 4.6 is sort of the, we'll call it the galactic standard for, especially when it comes to fighting the IC and the Remans, when it comes to their cruisers. Now, that is tough for the Hydrants because those ships are expensive, not to mention the fact they've also got a couple of YDNs here, 3 of them at the very least. Is there another YDN there? Yeah, 4 YDNs, excuse me. 4 YDNs, and it would seem as though 8 YCCs. Now, that alone is an impressive feat. You've got 4 ships that can command 10, have a 6 attack, and another 9 of these 4.6 ships. But take into consideration, again, the ISC. They have in the teens of 4-5 ships. Now, the 4-5, why is that important? Because, of course, 5 defense, they can take a lot of damage, but they have the 4 attack. They have the same amount of attack as the YCCs. So you're bringing as much firepower to the game, and they've got depth. The ISC do, that is, because they can use their destroyers as a 3-4 ship to soak up damage versus the Vols, which don't have as much capacity to be able to soak up damage. But they are really easy to repair. So depending on how pivotal these battles are, we'll see how that goes. So let's talk about how many Vols they have. They've got 4 and then another 6. So there's 10 Vols in this fleet. We've got another 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So you've got a total of 13 Vols in the vicinity plus all these other ships. I'm throwing around a lot of numbers. It might be hard to follow. Here's the point, the important point to take away. and I'll go over a battle that was shared with me from the Hydrants as far as like how this sort of played out. The ISC at this point have brought forward the number of ships that will at the very least equal the Hydrants, and they have a greater potential of attack. Their ships are just more powerful in those fights. Now, this is by no means a lost battle for the Hydrants, but whereas in the past, the Hydrants had lots of flexibility when it came to more ships in the area, and they could move around the ISC and cause them damage and cause them heartache and pain, that is less the issue now. At this point, this cork has effectively plugged this hole. What the ISC do with it from here and how they further reinforce it, I don't know. But a couple of things to think about. There were 2 tugs in that formation of ships in that on this little plug hole right here. 2 tugs, which means this is taking a lesson straight from the Hydrants. You can build and supply at the same time. You can have one tug build a base and the other tug provide extended supply. Those 2 things alone cause heartache and pain for the Hydrants in their ability to advance. Ironically, that's what the Hydrants were trying to do against the ISC, and we'll see how that goes. Now, let me get all this business off the screen and show you a couple other things. So we know that we've got what I call a center of strength or a pillar of strength here with the YDK that is supporting Justice Fleet. So there's no vector of attack that's realistically coming through this way to cause any heartache and pain for the ISC. But we do have a couple of ships over here, Iridium, Nickel, and Third Fleet and Tungsten Fleet. Okay, so let's, again, more wonderful fleet boxes with 1 ship in them. Thank you, Jim. Love you. Tungsten. Okay. Tungsten. I'm going to say metal. So Tungsten Fleet. We're just going to put that there. So Tungsten Fleet is this bottom one here. It has basically a survey ship with an escort frigate. That's what's here. A survey ship and 2 frigates. That's all that's right here. And then this fleet is Iridium and Nickel. And so Nickel and Iridium is basically the same thing. You've got a survey ship with, instead of 2 vols, 3 vols, and a tug. So what's going on here? This collection of ships in itself is not a threat. What they are doing is trying to explore and open up this wall that I was talking about and create another vector for attack. That's what these guys are trying to do. And what do they have in the vicinity? They've got 2nd, 5th in the area, and I have a feeling there's not much there either. So let's look at 2nd and Hydran 5th. Yeah, so as you can see here, we've got a YCC with 2 vols and another vol. At the end of the day, not a huge threat. Not nothing, but not a huge threat, and certainly not in a position to be able to sort of reach out and cause significant heartache and pain. You've got a fleet of frigates here that are sort of monitoring the situation. They'll be able to provide enough of a resistance to be able to prevent the Hydrants from doing anything hard and fast. But this whole schmoz on this border is really interesting because whereas the Hydrants had a lot of advantage at the very beginning, now they're really getting stuck in the mud. The ISC are doing a good job of slowing them down. Although, if you were to hear back and forth between the 2 of them, there is a they both have their beliefs of how much they are ready and able to beat the bejesus out of the other faction. Let me really quickly talk about one of the battles that occurred between these 2 folks. So, actually, sorry, I'll bring back the map here for a moment. In X-ray 20, which is the hex where all these fleets are, this is what happened. So there was initially a fight between 2 groups of ships or 2 fleets. The Hydrants, who were in that hex, they had a planetary ground base that was stationed there, a DN, a YDN, 3 YCCs, and 10 frigates, 10 vols. So they had a total of 14 ships, a couple of triad teams. Sorry, not 14 ships. Yeah, 14 ships, a planetary ground base, and some triad teams. So not the easiest target in the world, but something significant. The ISC, by contrast, had a DN, 2 YCCs, 2 YCAs, 12 YCLs, 2 commando ships, which sort of offset the triad teams, and 10 YDDs. So 22, 24, 29 ships, and 5 Marshal teams. So I would argue, based on that, very much a one-sided battle, because keeping in mind that the YCLs, at the very least, the YCLs from the ISC have the same attack factor as the YCCs from the Hydrons. So without going into the great, sort of what happened, the Hydrons withdrew before combat. And if you want to talk about the combat tutorial talks about how you can involve or what the sequence of events are in combat. So check that out in our playlist. But long story short, the Hydrons decided to withdraw. They withdrew their DN, 3 YCCs, and 3 falls before the attack, which is interesting because... So here's a little note for everybody when it comes to withdrawing before combat, and this might have been just something that was missed. When you withdraw before combat, you have to leave one of the top 3 command candidates for your command ship. What that means is, at the beginning of every combat round, there are 3 top ships that are candidates to be the command ship for a battle. That, in this case, would be, because of the ships involved for the Hydrons, the DN or one of the 2 of the 3 YCCs, meaning that one of those YCCs had to stay behind to control those ships. Because when you withdraw before combat, you're only allowed to withdraw at maximum 50% of the battle force, and you have to leave one of your top 3 command ships in place to command what remains, and the rest will retreat. So I'm not sure how that worked out here between the GM and the Hydron player, but regardless, this is what's being reported to me. DN and the CCs withdrew, and 3 vols. The rest retreated, so what ended up happening is the Hydrons took 4 vols as casualties. They were totally destroyed, and the ISC had 1 crippled destroyer. 1 crippled destroyer. My goodness. There was a second battle in Whiskey 20, which is this hex just above between the Orions and the ISC. So right up here, if you can see my cursor moving right there. So in that hex, there was also another battle, and the battle was between... Interesting. So this battle was between ISC, which had a DN, 2 YCCs, 2 YCAs, 16 YCLs, goodness, 2 commando cruisers, 11 destroyers, and 2 tugs. And I'm assuming what happened here was a sort of a combination of things. One probably attacked first, and then the next retreated. We'll have to see. I'll have to find out more. It sounds like it's the same force twice. Regardless, the Hydron forces withdrew before battle, and again, this shouldn't have happened the way it necessarily happened, I don't think. Well, the top 3 ships in this formation were the 2 YCCs and 1 of the vols. So the 2 YCCs withdrew before combat. That's perfectly legit. And the vols obviously stayed behind. So the 3 vols that were stayed behind were completely destroyed, and there was 1 YDD crippled. So it would seem as though in both of these instances, the ISC attacked, or maybe the Hydrons attacked in the case of X-Ray 20, and then the Hydrons decided to withdraw. That goes to, is that ink I see in the water? Because the Hydrons are obviously encountering the sort of strong opposing force that is the ISC, and their ability to respond and engage with them is decreasing. So they can't have those pivotal battles anymore, or not as frequently. So it's very interesting to see how this kind of plays out. So with that said, let's take a break from the map, come back to the chat, and tap in and see qu'est-ce qui arrive and what's going on with all of this. So let's jump in. Wow, there's so much chitter chatter. I'm going to dive into where Bill was talking about me building the B4. Again, I will share with you the narrative on that in a moment. When we get to the Klingon turn, I will share that little nugget of roleplay for you. George Duffy says, Jim, where did Iron and Neon fleets go? We will have to find out. Chuck saying, burn the Hydran homeworld, because, you know, Chuck is a big fan of crush, kill, destroy, all things Hydrans. Cheers, by the way. Eugene Bland, what's in Fox Fleet? We'll get to the Carnarvon turn in just a moment here and talk about Fox Fleet. Would the Hydran fleets be looking to open the door so the Fox Fleet can exploit that opening? That's my guess, but we'll, again, discuss that in a moment. Paul, if you want to know, I destroyed... Oh, my God. Paul says, if you want to know, I destroyed 11 Vols total, crippled 1, and I got 3 DD cripples from all my battles. Goodness gracious. Daniel says, the GM is still learning all the rules. Missed the bit about one of the top 3 command ships. No worries. No harm, no foul there, Daniel. But it's a missed opportunity for the ISC because, of course, they want to probably direct damage, as we learned in 2 streams ago, when the ISC are direct damaging those command platforms. Why is that so important? Because those YCCs cost so much for the Hydrans to build. Not only they're cruisers, and of course you want to take out a cruiser when you can, but if you can direct damage those ships, now granted in this case they would have been 3-1, so would there have been enough compot to be able to do that damage? I don't know. Or would there have been enough damage to cripple them and then destroy them in their retreat? Another thing to think about. Regardless, lots of opportunity here for the ISC to cause real economic pain and logistical hurt on the Hydrans based on the fleet composition. So something to think about. Chuck says, Dan, I got some flow sheets I can send you, Chuck says. Like I say, it's in for all of those who are looking to learn more about combat, in the combat tutorial in our playlist, you can check out all the rules in general. There are always nuanced things because, man, if you have ever seen the rule book for Federation Empire, it is a Bible. It is so thick. Like, I have to go through it in a PDF because I can't go through the hard copy and find what I need to find. Control F, search. It's the only way. But regardless, there's a lot in there, and there are nuanced special case scenarios potentially for every little thing. So, you know, if you miss something, it's sort of par for the course. But we all learn lessons as we go, and of course, we're getting better every day. I'm always learning new stuff about this game, new options, new ships, new capabilities, and things like that, especially as we advance through the tech and timeline. So, Daniel, don't feel bad about that. After all, 2 o'clock in the morning to be able to get a turnout, I got no criticisms for you, my friend. No criticisms at all. All right, let's head to Le Carnarvon. So, lot to cover, and why are we starting in Hydran space? Because we're talking about Fox Fleet. So, let's pull up Fox Fleet real quick so we can see what's in there. It's not nothing. You know, we got a YCC. Now, granted, their CCs, it's only a 3 attacks, but 7 defense. We got a couple of CAs, and then we've got cruiser bombardment ships, which is very interesting. They're more offensively potent than their YCC, but less defense factors. So 4 5s, commando cruiser, a drone bombardment destroyer, and 2 frigates. So not a crazy fleet, but not nothing. And they're heading up north. What's interesting about this is there's no way that they're being supplied by anything remotely Carnarvon. The Carnarvon convoy is back here. There's no capability for it to be able to provide supply. And so how are they being supplied? There's a rule about basically another faction can provide supply and support for up to, I think it was 24 ships. Up to, but you have to pay to do that. So the host nation has to provide and pay for that supply. It's a one-time cost, but it's a cost, and it can be withdrawn at any time. But once you withdraw it, you have to pay it again to be able to provide it. So sort of interesting. In our supply tutorial, actually, we talk about that again in the playlist. You'll be able to see the thumbnail. It's pretty obvious. My face with some hexes and a red background. You'll check it out, and you can find out about how that works and homeless ships in this game. So, long story short, Fox Fleet and the odd little ship here, a frigate and what is this? A destroyer escorting a commercial convoy, are heading into Hydron space. I'm going to guess that Fox Fleet is going to help the Hydrons poke a hole in the ISC defenses. But as we've seen, the ISC probably have some pretty good capability to be able to stop them. And once they get damaged, while they can certainly be repaired at Hydron bases, there's not a lot of Hydron bases in this area to support repair and resupply. So it'll be very interesting to see how much and how effective the Carnivons can project their force going forward. Anyways, we'll see. As we go down here, we can see that they have now, let me just take away the ships. Have they actually completed it? 95 fall, I think. I think we have. I think we're in 95 fall. I'd have to check because there's a difference between the turn number and the season. So for those of you who are following at home, for every turn, for every year, I should say, in the game, there is 2 turns. There is a fall and a spring season, 2 halves to the year. So there are 2 turns per year. And as we're moving forward, we didn't start at year 0. So just keeping track of where we are year-wise versus turn-wise, off the top of my head, I can't remember where we are. But assuming that they started building that last turn, looks like it will most likely finish this turn, and then they will have a base in this area. 3 supply hex, as you can see here, from Refuge, which is their colony where they can draw supply from. And so you can see here now that, interesting, that the Carnivon are building a YBS here. In addition, the Tholians, my goodness, the Hydrons are building a base in this same area. If 94 fall is when that's going to finish, I would expect that this base is already finished and that this one is going to be finished this following turn, turn 60, or something to that effect. So very interesting to see how that's evolving. And it would seem as though they've captured a YLR, which is an Orion ship. They have a tug, a frigate, and a cruiser bombardment ship there. Very interesting combination of ships there, along with their Lyran, their captured Lyran YCA. There's also this convoy heading up there with a CA, drone bombardment destroyer, and a frigate. Very curious to see how this is going to evolve. It does seem to me like the Carnivons are building, like the Remans are, a supply network into Hydron space, but there's more distance for them to cover. I'm curious as to how effective that will or won't be. Very, very interesting. I should note the bug, the space lens, is over in the corner here. It is slowly moving towards more Hydron infrastructure. You will notice that if we take away the ships for a second, this base is very close to being isolated. I believe, so the Hydrons have supply 4. Even if this base is destroyed, they'll still have access to all these resources. But if this base and this base were destroyed, you'd start losing some access to some of this stuff. And again, this speaks to the fragility of the Hydron base structure or base infrastructure system. That bug or space lens is heading in that direction. Will it continue to head south? Will it head towards the Carnivon border? And if it does, what are the Carnivon going to do about it? It'd be very interesting to see how that evolves going forward and what the Carnivon will or won't be able to do in response. As we scroll down, let's take a look at Home Fleet. Home Fleet continues to be posted on this wormhole. Let's take a look. Carnivon, Home Fleet, boom, not small. That is for sure. 4 frigates, 2 destroyers, 2 drone bombardment destroyers, 2 CAs, a drone bombardment cruiser, and, drone bombardment cruiser, And sorry, I'm thinking, because up until now, I've been seeing the number, which is, for example, on that drone bombardment cruiser, it has a 2 in brackets and then the N. So in the past, I have seen the drone bombardment. I'm just going to look it up real quick. So there's a number for the heel nipper, which is that N. And then there's a number for drone bombardment. Now, drone bombardment is a... We'll pull that one up. Drone bombardment is one of the features that a number of different factions have. And they have the ability to be able to basically launch missiles, is what they are, into a battle. And drone bombardment ships, excuse me, are, it would seem, they're able to sort of not be on the direct battle line and cause a lot of damage. So for some reason, I'm having a brain fart here about drone bombardment. Yeah, okay. So I was making a mistake, and I apologize. So as described in the rules, and this is in the very beginning of the rule set for the Federation Empire folks at home, if you're looking up the rules, it's in 103, what is this, 103.3. So here, I'll show you this real quick on my screen. So this is an example of the rules in Federation Empire. Now here you can see this is the breakdown of how a counter looks like. And you can see on the CVL, which is that Enterprise looking counter there, you've got the class, the fighters, the scout, the attack, and drone defenses. Now, as we scroll down here, you will see there's all these different things that can be on that counter, one of which is the number in parentheses. The number in parentheses is the number of drone bombardment factors. So, whereas I had mistakenly believed that the N for the heel nipper plus that parentheses number was the number of heel nippers it had, my mistake. 2 is the number of drone bombardment factors, missiles basically, that it can launch against an opponent. 2 is the number of drone attack factors that it can launch in a battle. The N is just 1 heel nipper. So when it comes to combat and using drones, and maybe we'll create a tutorial about that, but basically when you use drones, you have to pay money, which is basically paying for the missiles, to launch those drones into a battle. Every round that you inflict damage using drones costs you a certain amount of EP. So there's a lot of drone bombardment potential there in the Carnarvon fleet. They've got lots of these things. So what does that say? As we go back to this map, we can see that we've got 2, 6. So this fleet alone has 6 ships that could be in the, when we look at the battle board, which for those of you who don't remember is, I'm trying to pull it up without completely. Oh, anyways, in the battle board, which I will show you here briefly, you can see that the back line is where the DB ships would be, the drone bombardment ships. And you can have as many as 3 of them. So when you have 3 ships there, you're able to launch those drone bombardment factors into the fight. Again, costing you money every time you do it, but that's why these ships in the Carnarvon fleet are so dangerous, shall we say. So let's get back to, that was home fleet. So let's go back to the rest of their fleet here. We've got a number of, basically, we've got a WDN. Huh, interesting. They had another DN here. I wonder if they upgraded it and put it somewhere. They have a WDN, a bunch of prime teams, and sort of like random ships, a CL, a YFF, and a Tug. Now, we've got Den Fleet, First Reserve, and Coyote. Thank you, Carnarvon player. Terry, that is, for being able to keep things relatively succinct. So let's move things around and let's show you these fleets. So Coyote, there's Coyote, put that up there, and First Reserve. Carnarvon, First Reserve. There we go. Okay, so this is what we got on the Carnarvon side. So we'll start right and we'll work our way left, and I'll collapse the boxes as we go. So First Reserve, as you can see here, is basically an exploration fleet. You've got a large exploration freighter with an escort. No big deal, no harm, no harm, no foul. And you've got a tug and another large exploration ship in that area. What does this tell us? Tell us that the Carnivons are focused on exploration and they're moving that northwest. Great, no problem. The Coyote Bands, which is this fleet over in the corner here, so they have a very unhappy planet. And the bad thing about unhappy planets is that they have a tendency to sort of go rogue and declare independence from you. Random events will occur that will trigger this. And so he's got a cruiser, drone bombardment, destroyer, and 2 frigates there supporting or making sure that they don't do that. Now, let's get to the exciting one. Qu'est-ce qui arrive? We have Den Fleet. Now, you see Den Fleet, and this is going to go into the Klingon turn. So we have Den Fleet. We have a DN, a YCC, a YCA, a drone bombardment destroyer, a normal destroyer, and a couple of YFFs. So let's just be clear. This fleet is not the Den Fleet of old, the juggernaut fleet that came in and sort of initiated that attack against us, the surprise attack against us, the Klingons that is, during our war with the Romulans. It is not that fleet. What it is, though, is it's a good base on which you can build. So because he's got a DN there and these other supporting ships, it's not an easy target to take out, but it's not an overly threatening position. It is interesting to note that he's got a DN there that he's chosen to move forward to that YDK. However, it's by no means the end of the world. It is what it is. That being said, from the Klingon perspective, we have seen what they have done before, the Carnivon that is, and so we just need to be mindful of that. That goes to another interesting event that occurred over this past turn. In the last live stream, you might have seen on this border that Wolfpack was in this hex. And they were moving around inside the neutral zone. Now, as per the agreement with the Carnivon, like the neutral zone is not an area for you to move large formations of ships around in willy-nilly or for no reason. Now, Wolfpack, let's just pull up so you can see what Wolfpack was and is. It's not nothing. It's 3 destroyers, 3 frigates, and this drone bombardment destroyer. 7 ships. That's not an exploration fleet. That's something else. And they were in the neutral zone. So the Klingons, in a friendly way, sent the weakest possible ship that we have, which is the E1, to intercept them in the neutral zone and say, hey guys, looks like you're lost. Can I help you find your way back home? And they acquiesced to that request and retreated back. So they have withdrawn to this world, which they've taken, and no harm, no foul. Everything's okay. So that's good. Now, in the process of that, it looks like this sort of an unintentional, I didn't mean to do this, but this is an unintentional consequence, is that the resource flipped to Klingon. And that was just because the way I wrote my orders, I wrote my instructions to the GM that I was just going to move to intercept that fleet. Now, that fleet just happened to be in that hex, and so that's where we went, and that's how that happened, and that's just how that resolved. Again, no harm, no foul. It's just that, when you send 7 ships into the neutral zone, that's not nothing. And it deserves a response. Now, granted, an E1 is by no means a threatening ship, but if you think about this from the Klingon perspective, you got this faction, this player, who backstabbed you, was sneaky about it, and sort of jumped on you when you were at your most vulnerable. Now they are moving not inconsequential groups of ships into the neutral zone, and they're moving big command ships near the border. I mean, if I was overly trusting, then I wouldn't have an issue with that. But considering this is a faction that did backstab you before, it would behoove you, if you were the Klingons, to cautiously take preparations in case something were to happen. That will go to our little narrative story, which we will talk about here in a moment. Let me actually take this moment to jump in to this narrative piece. So, as you may have remembered, and you may have known, when it comes to the Klingon Empire, we are inspired and motivated, or sort of inspired, and the narrative is driven by these, by the template and the model of the Warhammer 40K universe. Specifically the Alpha Legion in the Warhammer 40K, the pre-Horus Heresy Warhammer 40K universe. If you don't know anything about Warhammer 40K, here's the encapsulated, the short form. There are 3 sort of genetically engineered super Klingons that are leading the Klingon faction. They led the Klingon faction out of a period of cataclysm, and they were created and generated by an ancient AI. And so they are currently leading the Klingon Empire. There are 3 of them. They're identified as the Alpha, the Gamma, and the Omicron. Now, Omicron, they initially were introduced in the narrative as Alpha first, then Omicron, and then Gamma. They are all known amongst the Empire as the Alpha. There is only one of these guys when it comes to the greater understanding amongst the fleet, but there are 3 brothers, triplets, clones of each other, that mutually exist. Now, there's the Alpha, who predominantly has a sort of a in the same spirit as an Alpha strike, has a very direct and overwhelming force. Call it the Powell Doctrine approach. There is Omicron, which is much more diplomatic and subterfuge oriented, more about being sneaky and misdirecting to be able to accomplish your goals as opposed to using the straight hammer. And then there's Gamma. Gamma is an interesting element of the trio because he is completely transparent, completely open, and it doesn't have any of the characteristics of Omicron, and at the same time uses overwhelming force to be able to accomplish his goals. But he telegraphs that to you and tells you what he's going to do. So it's a very interesting, strange persona. Until recently, in the narrative aspect, there has been this sort of evolving thing that has occurred. Gamma specifically was the Primarch, was the one of the 3 brothers that was dealing with the Romulans on the Romulan War. He dealt with with Nippon. He dealt with taking Nippon, conquering it. Dealt with the Romulans, and so on and so forth. He just recently took the Paravian planet, which was called V. You might have seen that as the thumbnail from our last episode, The Fall of V. And so he has been really focused and oriented around this war fighting. There is, and without revealing too much, there is an element of narrative story that is occurring, or role-playing that's occurring in the back end, that is motivating certain actions with this character. And the more that the sort of environment of the game is providing avenues or outlets for this particular series of behaviors, the more they're being reinforced and the more it's driving a certain outcome. And if they don't provide those things, then it'll drive it the other way, and different behaviors will be reinforced. So basically, this character is being stimulated by what's happening on the map to do certain things. And as a consequence, he engaged in the following discussion. As I go into the story narrative, he engaged in the following discussion with one of his folks. So let's walk a little bit back, and I will give you the narrative just before the invasion of V, or the conquering of V, and then right after. So here it goes. This is the context. The moon of the serpent, so month of September, 94 years post-schism. Post-schism is like AD as far as the date. The schism was the cataclysmic event that occurred in the Klingon history. The The insipid taste of the blood wine was merely the most recent symptom of his growing appetites. Despite the potent blend of vintages from Nepal, the Gamma's thirst was rarely satisfied these days with the barrels of blood wine he consumed. On the bridge of his command ship, the Red Fleet prepared for their military operation against the V. This pesky population of Xenos dared to threaten Klingon fleet movements in the area. The Gamma admired their willfulness. It elevated the quality of their sacrifice in the battle to come. They would fight with the spirit and tenacity of spiteful arrogance, and the battle would be glorious. These were exactly the sacrifices needed on his path to enlightenment. Signal the fleet. We depart once repairs are complete. Aye, Lord. Support ships report ready and are standing by for your word to proceed. Very good. Let us bring the gravity and weight of our noble purpose to those who would seek to soar above it. By the way, the Praevians are like a bird-like species. Think of them like feathered dinosaurs, so that's the pun there. Taking a seat in his command throne, the Gamma curled his fingers over the polished skulls that adorned the arms of his centered seat. Make it so. The lights dimmed to red. The formation adopted battle stations. Smiling, the Gamma anticipated the hum of battle as the fleet jumped to warp. And so that was the prelude to the Battle of V. The Battle of V occurred, conquered V, and then this occurred. Lord Shipwright, it is good to see you. The one-legged Klingon's attention did not waver from the layered halo blueprint suspended in the air in front of him. My lord, I have the design ready for your review. I think you will find it singular in design in the galaxy, one with no equal. In the years since the conclusion of the Romulan-Klingon conflict, there had been many debates between Lord Admirals and strategic academics as to the effectiveness of the Romulan command and control system. The Vulture-class dreadnought had represented a dramatic shift in the fleet command assessments, and a response to the design had been debated. Following the conclusion of the conflict, the Alpha had commissioned the Lord Shipwright, the Empire's expert in ship design, to come up with a concept that would exceed all current standards within and beyond the borders of the Empire. The Alpha loomed over the Shipwright as he reviewed the design, swiping through the layers of deck schematics. The stoic leader of the Empire completed his assessment in silence. The only sound was the faint hum of his armor's servos as he moved his hand to swipe to the next deck design. How long will it take to construct? My lord, I cannot answer definitively at this time. As this will be a first in class of its design, there will need to be iterative and progressive work. I can say that it may take several years to complete. The Alpha's hand rested on his utility belt, adorned with several skulls of various species. The leader's palm rested on an avian skull, the bleached white bone contrasting with the highly polished dark sapphire of the giant's armor. Very well. You have my leave to begin this project in earnest. I will monitor your progress from the field. Your updates will prove a stimulating distraction. Thank you, my lord. Looking back to acknowledge his patron, the Alpha had already left. So, what do you think about that? Obviously, my delivery a little spotty there. Let me take a sip. But what do you think? That's some of the narrative that's going on and some discussion that's going on in the background. I know that there is some chitter chatter as to what it exactly is underway, and I will leave that unanswered question for you to ponder as to what is coming down the pike. There are several options, not just one, even though I know that there is a dominant opinion as to what it is. What is it, rather, that the shipwright designed? What is it that they are building, and how long will it take? We shall see. We shall see. Nonetheless, there is some stuff going on, and it's all about command and control. So how does that apply to this game and or what we see on the map? Let's go back and discuss. So as we mentioned, and I'll move my head to the other side just to make it a little bit easier here. So as we discussed, when it comes to the Klingon Empire, we have obviously lots going on here. To be clear, since the end of the war with the Romulans, the emphasis of the Klingon Empire has been, in the spirit of Strange New Worlds, a 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and civilizations, and conquer them, submitting them to Klingon rule. That is what we're up to right now. So we're exploring, expanding, exploiting resources, and exterminating any opposition we come across. There is, as I mentioned, an emphasis on the exploration piece right now, and as you can see, I mean, I've got a number of exploration ships out and about doing their thing. You've got a couple exploration cruisers in the sort of the north end working their way up and out. We've also got a couple of exploration freighters doing their thing right here. In addition, because of the recent sort of transit of wormholes without crippling ships, it has drawn the Klingons' attention that they need to perhaps invest some time and energy into researching and developing that technology. This wormhole here is our only access to a wormhole. So the R&D team that's located on here was initially deployed there to be able to conduct accelerated research on this path. However, in collaboration with our good Romulan neighbors, we have come up with an alternative solution that we will be executing shortly, and the Romulan and Klingon Empire will be further cementing their bonds of friendship as we move past our conflicts or misunderstandings of yesteryear and move towards a much more productive and profitable relationship in the years to come. So that's what's going on there. And of course, a couple of little things, just sort of like housekeeping. You'll notice that this particular, I'll just take away the ships here quickly. Oh, that was the bases. Excuse me. Let's take away the ships. Thank you. So this was the Romulan base that had been previously Romulan, and we had captured. Now we've converted it back to, or we've converted it to Klingon. So now you can see that there's a number of bases in this area, and we'll be sort of filling out the breadth of base construction to facilitate various things. It'll be my intention, as we've discussed with the Romulans, to make this a YDK to be able to provide trade back and forth between this YDK and Bravo 45. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes between us, and that is the magic number to be able to run trade back and forth between two bases like that, and they have to be YDKs to do that. So we will be doing that shortly. What else we got? That's really all that we got on the Klingon side. Like I said, we've discovered conquered, I should say, V, and we're continuing to sort of drive that economic piece forward. One of the sort of big takeaways of the wars that we fought is that the wars have a detrimental effect on our economic development, and that's an important thing going forward. We need to make sure that we maintain our economic strength, and so we'll just kind of drive that piece going forward. Let's slide across and take a look at Romulan Space. Oh my goodness, look at this. So a couple of big sort of takeaways for the ROMs. They are doing a great job of this exploration. Let's take away the ships for a sec. You can see they've completed this base here, which is extending their supply and their ability to reach out and explore this new territory. You can see all these legions in this area, these legion fleets. They're all exploration fleets of one sort or another. And so you can see they're effectively doing that quite well, moving throughout this area. So that's really, really good. You can see that they continue to push north, And it'll be interesting to see the dynamic or the relationship between the Gorn and the Romulan in this respect, because as they push, the Romulans that is, as they push further north, they're effectively going to cut off the Gorn. And so to have some kind of discussion with the Gorn to sort that piece out is going to be important. So what is that going to look like, and how are they going to map that piece forward? It's going to be interesting because as we get closer to the center here, everyone's borders are going to converge, and inevitably some people are going to have access to, and some people aren't going to have access to the center of the universe, or the galaxy, I should say. What that looks like going forward, we shall see. All right. So, but nothing too big or too crazy. I'll just take a quick look at Second Legion here, because I mean, I'm always kind of curious as to what the Romulans are putting on the border. So you can see Second Star Legion. That's the one here. They've got a couple of WBs and a Kingbird. Nothing out of the ordinary. They do have a troop transport. So this is the assault ship, troop assault ship that they have here. It's an interesting thing that it's staying there. I mean, there's nowhere else for it to really go. I think it was initially sent to be able to just take Siri, which was this planet or colony here. They haven't taken it, or they haven't done that because it's in the neutral zone, and part of our agreement was that it was going to stay neutral. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, effectively the Romulans are continuing to do exactly what they said they were going to do, or it looks like they're going to do: explore, expand, and exploit resources. Less on the extermination part. That's more of, I guess, the Klingon forte. As we go over to the Gorn, very interesting, just in the chitter-chatter back and forth, in the role-playing aspect, there is some inclination, or indication, I should say, that the Gorn and the Tholians are going to start trading back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys go back and forth. Let's just take a quick look here. We can see that the diplomacy is not very effective yet on this planet here, as they are still very much unhappy. We have exploration ships with a destroyer escort doing more exploration, building that Gorn economy. You can see that this commando ship, based on this colony, this is really good. The colony providing the supply. If I'm the Gorn, I'm pushing this northeasterly exploration as quickly as possible, just so that you don't get cut off by the ROMs. But you know, you got to balance that with everything else. They've got these other fleets that are continuing to explore and expand their fog of war hexes that they have, and of course, dealing with the Tholians. The Tholians are they're going to be a very interesting faction to deal with, because how is this player going to evolve going forward? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know exactly what they're going to be able to do, but we shall see. Let's take a look at Mobile Fleet real quick just to see what's in there. Gorn. Mobile Fleet? There we are, Mobile Fleet. So they've got their battle ship. WBI. Yeah, it's a battleship. Yeah, okay. So they have a battleship, which is a 2.6, but it's a W era, so it's garbage. And basically, this is all their W era ships. They've got frigate, interceptor frigates, or improved frigates. They've got a destroyer leader, an improved destroyer, another improved destroyer plus, improved. Oh my God, yeah. So they've got all these W era ships, which is not necessarily great. Not terrible, but not fantastic. You've got a Tholian cruiser, Y era cruiser, that's just hovering here on the border. Which, you know, there's no big harm, no foul here. There's no big conflict happening yet between the Tholians and the Gorn. Big thing to take away, though, we've said this about the Gorn since day one. They are doing amazing considering their footprint. They are at 39. What was it? 39 and a half? I think that's where they're at. 39 and a half. Gorn. 39 and a half EP. 39.5 EP. Look how big they are relative to everybody else. Let's zoom out for a sec. Just look at that footprint. Here, I'll move this over just a little bit. Oh, hold on. Okay. Look at their footprint relative to the Tholians, relative to the Romulans. even relative to the Klingons. I mean, the Klingons are just a little bit bigger, but look at how big their economy is for what they are. It's impressive. And they're doing an excellent job of exploring what they have, especially considering what they've got when it comes to their ships. So what does that mean? The Gorn can and will be a huge force in GW and late M era, which is just around the corner, M era, that is. And their ability to keep exploring or keep expanding and keep adding EP to their economy is going to be their recipe for success. Can they maintain that while not starting fights with their neighbors? I would argue that the Tholians are a very low risk, considering that the offensive firepower of Tholian ships is virtually nil. The way you're going to be able to get progress with them is to really accelerate your exploration and expansion, because Tholians aren't going to start a fight with you. Romulans aren't going to start a fight with you now that we have our tripartite agreement. And so really at this point, Gorn, focus on exploration. Tech advance to the M era and then in GW, and just drive that economic engine. If you can get your economy up and running, have a sufficient defense force so you can protect yourself against things like juggernauts and various other things, but get that economy going. The more you explore and expand, the better that's going to be. And it's a bit of a land grab, so don't get boxed in. All right, let's go to the geographic big red, which is the Tholian Empire. Now, a couple of interesting things here. I continue to see them using their prime teams and cruisers to explore to the east. They are, so this column here, right above my head, is the center line of the map, the Charlie column. They are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're only 9 hexes away from it. And depending on where you are on the map, Charlie 27, 28 is really the center of the galaxy. So they're close, relatively close, especially considering when you look at like their homeworld is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've got, up to this point in the game, they've expanded half the distance to the center of the galaxy. Now, when they get to the center of the galaxy, who are they going to encounter? We expect that to be the Juggernauts, i.e. the big baddie, who's going to pound you and destroy you. So the question is, are they interested in getting there and encountering the Juggernauts? Maybe. But there's also this, at the very beginning of this campaign, there was this temptation that was dropped, indicating great riches at the center of the universe, or center of the galaxy, excuse me. And so if there is great wealth or great resources, great like planets and things at the center of the galaxy, then that's motivation to go there. The question is, are we going to let the Tholians get there first? We'll see. Currently, like I say, they're exploring hard to the east. You can see that they've got a diplomat on that homeworld for the ISC planet, and they're gonna get it. The thing about the ISC planet though is it's so if they get them, the question is, are the Kzinti going to hold out? Because while this is a minor planet, this is a medium planet, and the medium planet provides you 4 EP. So minor planets provide you 3, developing 4, major 5, and so it's just like the Tholians just have this advantage at this point when it comes to these discovered planets to be able to really accelerate their economies above and beyond most other folks. So it's really important that we move this ball forward and get that done as far as addressing it. What does that mean? Finding ways for these minor factions to oppose or keep the Tholians from integrating them, or at least forcing them to cripple or devastate the planet in order to do that, because then it minimizes the economic impact. That being said, here I am trash talking the Tholians. Let's talk about the good things that they're doing. They're exploring and expanding faster than anybody. They are, with the exception of the Romulans. The Romulans are doing better. They're using their exploration freighters, 3 of them, the small ones, as best they can. The big ones on the east coast, or the east side of their map as best as they can. They're using cruisers with prime teams to be able to accelerate or accentuate that exploration, and they've explored and fortified a bunch of these wormholes and various other things. So this is the kind of stuff that's going on. I keep trying to draw everyone's attention to the Tholians because they are quite literally the sleeping giant in the game. There is a point in M and GW when they will become very difficult to deal with. But you can say that about any faction. The ISC are incredibly powerful and difficult to deal with in GW. The Gorn even more so. Like, each faction will have its sort of its moment in the sun. The Tholians, they will provide a unique challenge relative to everybody else, and because of the player who's playing them, he will be very good at making that challenging. So the question is, how will we engage and deal with that in the future? Only time will tell. Let's look at the Federation. Ooh, look at that. They've discovered a new faction. A Kzinti faction right on the border. I like it. A medium planet. Very nice to see. And they are indifferent, so they're neutral. So hopefully the Federation will do a good job at sort of bringing them on side. Considering they also have another faction over here, this could be very interesting. So if they are able to get this minor planet with a 3 and a medium planet with a 4, they can bring that 7 EP online. Wow, that would put them in the top tier of economies if they could do that. Now, granted, it'll take a while for them to do that, especially considering their success with the Carnivon planet here, which is atrocious. Like, it's just bad luck. If they're able to do that, that's another 8 EP they'll be able to add to their economy. And considering they're at 38 now, that could get them to 46. That would be really, 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 really good. Question for them, though, why not just conquer them? Why not just go to limited war, conquer them, get them into your economy now? Because one of the things we're talking about is time under the curve. If you're able to get your economy up to a certain point, it's the time underneath the curve that matters the most as far as your advancement in the long term. Because the compound value of those added EPs over time, what is the value of that versus the diplomacy? Now, granted, if you can do it quickly and effectively, the diplomacy is the better way to go. There's a role-playing aspect to take into account when it comes to role-playing, when it comes to bringing these folks in. But again, it's just a matter of like what strategy works best. In this case, unfortunately, they're having a challenging time with the Carnivon faction, this minor faction right here, but we'll see. Let's take away the ships real quick just so we can look at their bases. We can see their base network is kind of lacking in this little pocket here, but we know that they're sort of converging. They're converging to this point here. So if they keep building bases laterally and down this diagonal line, they're going to have all the supply they need to be able to explore this area. One particular note, will notice that they have a base station right here, and the Klingons sent through an E1 requesting repair and resupply because, as I talked about before, in order to be able to begin the research and development into wormholes, we need to send a ship through the wormhole, which we did. And so now we're now in the group of factions that are researching wormhole tech, if only because, you don't want to get caught with your pants down and not be able to sort of walk through the wormhole and sort of retaliate. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, what do we got? We've got the continued challenge of the diplomacy with the Carnivon faction here. Although they are Happy Plus, they still haven't, they haven't been brought on side. They're not blue. We got the Klingons came through the wormhole, and granted, there's 7 fleet there plus a base. There's no risk that an E1, especially a crippled E1, is a threat to the Federation. Just be able to sort of initiate that research for wormhole tech. We've also got this other wormhole, the uniform wormhole that's up here. That was the one that the ISC went through, and you can see that there is now a Federation home fleet there. Let's take a quick look at what's in Federation home fleet. Whoops, wrong box, pardon me. Probably nothing too crazy. 5 frigates and 3 cruisers. Okay, so probably because, of course, the ISC represent a more potent threat, and the fact that they can go through the wormhole without being crippled, much stronger indicator of their potential going forward. So it'll be very interesting to see how that evolves as we walk this forward. So very, Very interesting. Right, so we got the Federation growing. Commercial convoys going back and forth between the Lyrans and the Federation. And again, they're continuing to explore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And, of course, the 6th one down here. 6 fleets or ships with prime teams and cruisers working their way towards the center. The Federation, although they are the smallest economy, they have a lot of potential. And I still think that they are not to be underestimated, because the Federation in M era become quite dangerous. So important to watch out for them. Let's look at the, let's move my head to the other side. Whoop. Let's look at the Lyrans here. We can see their exploration efforts. Let's take away the ships for a sec. You see they've got a base here. So 1, 2, 3 supply. So they are continuing to explore down this way. And they have an injured Stalker team being their prime team. So they have an injured Stalker team. Usually that's just something like a random event, and they can only be repaired at the homeworld. That is why they're back at the homeworld. We can see that the remainder of their fleet continues to do not too much that's too different or exciting. We do focus that up here we can see that they've finally taken out that Paravian planet. So now that is an added EP for them. So White Stripe and Blood Claw. Let's take a look at how much damage they took. Blood Claw Fleet, and White Stripe. Lyran, White Stripe. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we can see in the taking of that, so there was if memory serves, there was a YBS, there was a cruiser, a destroyer, 3 frigates, I think, and maybe a planetary ground base. So nothing too crazy, but in taking that, they've crippled 2 frigates, 3 frigates, and 2 destroyers. So nothing too significant. But so before I go off on this little tangent or this little story, that let's just take away the ships for a sec. You can see they are building a base here to be able to facilitate the last exploration of these hexes, and rounding out their supply reach to the rest of most of their territory. They're going to have to do the same thing along here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they're going to have to do that sort of in this area as well, and maybe provide a little bit more robust defense against the Federation, unless they've already established a really good relationship with them. And then, of course, build out some kind of defense against the Remans, because Remans will just roll in and cry havoc. But one of the interesting things that has occurred with the Lyrans is this little piece of narrative gold. Now, before I jump into it, I want to say, if you are interested in following along with the narrative roleplay that occurs, this happens on a channel that we have in our Discord. If you want to join our Discord, then please feel free. You can check it out on the Coffee link that is down there. You can also check it out at our Patreon, both of which have a tier that you can access to provide us monthly support and get into our Discord server and be able to participate in our funny banter back and forth, our teasing, poking fun at each other, be able to participate in the evolution of this new campaign that we have coming, and the evolving narrative and role-playing story that is occurring in this one. So while I can certainly share it with you here and now, you'll be able to follow along in real time if you're on our Discord. And of course, we just love to have more of you on our community, because we're just one big happy family of players trying to have fun. And the more of us that are looking to have fun together, the better. Okay, let's take a quick look here. So Chuck says in his role-playing thread, try vid news service, Flash, Lyranton. From the Imperial Palace, Emperor Ferox was successfully challenged and defeated by the chief assassin within the past month or so. All immediate members of the royal family have been in conclave in the palace, getting ready to announce the new emperor. Who this may be and what direction they may take the empire at this time is not known. The apparent reason for the challenge was the late emperor's timidity in handling the Paravian situation and the loss of face to the Hydran Carnarvon filth. So, what does that say? What does that tell us? Is there a shift in the direction that the Lyrans are going to take? Are they going to try and focus a more hostile, aggressive energy and effort towards the Hydran and Carnivons? There has already been a lot of banter back and forth on this role-playing channel about the Lyrans and their Carnivon oppressors. There's been this back and forth, and there is certainly some animosity there. So are the Lyrans going to attack the Hydrans? Are they going to lash out at the Carnivons? What kind of research had they gotten on their wormhole tech? No one knows yet, but they certainly have a base and research being done on that location. So maybe they are a lot further along than even the ISC. Maybe they have the ability to launch an attack through that wormhole. Maybe something is coming. We'll have to see. Only time will tell. So let me throw myself into... Let me throw myself into the chat here real quick. All right, Chuck, we're going to pick up where Dan, I got some flow sheets I can send you. He's got over 500 pages. We're talking about the rules for Federation Empire. Oh, my goodness. Daniel Eastland. 1, up to 12 homeless ships. And 2, expeditionary fleet up to 12 ships. Oh, yeah, so there's... we can go over the rules, but yes, there's 12 homeless ships. There's another component of the rules that indicates up to, I think it's 24, but we can discuss that. At the end of the day, the GM says what the GM says, and them's the rules, baby. Eugene says, what can one do with a captured pirate? I didn't think that the ships were all that capable. Speaking of captured fleets, please remember to note the one the Klingons captured. Oh, right. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So that was an auxiliary battleship that the Klingons captured. Let me just scroll down. Long story short, it's just part of my home fleet. It is currently located on my home world, and it's just sitting there, chilling out. It's just another ship that's been added to the fleet. I will show you real quick here. My dog is making all sorts of funny noises in the corner. So you can see here in my home fleet, which is on my home system, I've got the battle cruiser, the auxiliary battle cruiser 4-5, and I've got a D3 command cruiser that's in that area as well. That's it. Nothing too exciting. Haven't really done too much with it. It's just adding and buffing defense of the home system. Do bugs get more powerful with battle experience? Are they worn down? Essentially, do they repair and learn? Good question. Only the GM can answer that question, Eugene. I'm going to say that whatever the monster is, generally speaking, most monsters can repair and recover over time. But just like to make things fair, that just doesn't happen in one turn. So if you're able to maintain the attacks and keep causing damage onto these monsters, then you can eventually get them. But how damaged they are or are not is something that is completely behind the curtain with the Wizard of Oz that we call Daniel. Bill says, Death Bolt is the drone bombardment. Death Bolt is the drone bombardment. Heel Nipper is being used as a mini mauler. Effectively, heel nippers are like maulers. They allow you to do 1 point of directed damage with some restrictive criteria. I have a quick stream that you can find on our channel in the playlist for New World's live streams, where I just talk about heel nippers real quick. I did that while the family was on vacation recently around Easter. BB is an economic trap. Battleship. Lord Lawless says the battleship is an economic trap. Really? Oh, I mean, good thing I'm not building one. I mean, yeah. Actually, let me talk about this real quick. So one of the interesting strategies of the Klingon Empire up to this point is that whereas in previous games I built a lot of dreadnoughts and frigates to support them, and I was using the dreadnoughts as a command and control platform to be able to bring more ships to a fight, and then of course, more bang for your buck. My experience with using dreadnoughts, granted dreadnoughts as command platforms are great, but using and focusing all the time, energy, and economic resources it takes to build those dreadnoughts was better. I found that there was, like you're describing here, Lord Lawless, if the battleship is an economic trap, I was finding that to be challenging, or an economic trap, you might say, when it came to dreadnoughts. Now, don't get me wrong, dreadnoughts are good, but as soon as the M era came across, those dreadnoughts sucked. I mean, they were good for command platforms, but their offensive firepower was not all that good. Now, the Klingon dreadnoughts are upgradable from Y era. Well, they're basically a Y plus, sort of middling the difference between Y and M era. For example, the C4 is the dreadnought for the Klingons. It's a 6/8 ship, just like many of the other dreadnoughts that are out there. It upgrades to a C4B, which is a straight 8 ship. So that's good, except that it still only moves 4. So it's got basically Y era movement, M era weapons, if that makes sense. So those are good, but again, the maneuverability can be a challenge. So I've been looking at what options there are available for the Klingon fleet to sort of expand and grow. And again, talking about command and control, these are some of the weights that are on the scales that I'm measuring. So I won't reveal just yet what it is that's going on behind closed doors and in catacombs below the Klingon capital, but I will let you know as soon as the reveal is out and about. Bill says, captured ships get converted to capturing players' tech. The space lens, aka Jim's bug, is a bugger to kill, and he has fed it frigates to move it away from his homeworld. You destroy it or it stays healthy. No attrition on the bug. That's what Bill is saying now. Okay. Well, that's kind of what's going on with the bug and the space lens when it comes to the campaign in Hydron Space. We've done the tour of turn 60. We are in the second phase of the game. What do you think in the comments, in the chat, as far as how this game is going to go forward? What do you think of the fact that all these factions are starting to form? The ISC Riemann Alliance, the Hydron Carnarvon Coalition, the defensive bubble that is the Hydron Romulan, the Klingon Romulan Gorn enclave, or the collaboration of the Lyrans, Federation, and Tholians. What and how are these different factions, are these different relationships going to influence the future of the game? One of the things that's really interesting about this 4X iteration versus normal Federation and Empire is that Federation and Empire is it's a World War II game, baby. You know who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, what the sides are, and so on. In this game, much more like something like Game of Thrones, it's all about the table talk, baby. Yes, there is war. There are wars that happen. Yes, you can play that out in real time. And yes, you can have that fight and be satisfied with it. But at the end of the day, it is the table talk, the discussion, the role play that really drives this game forward. That is the intriguing piece. That is the fun in the sun, you might say, the secret sauce that makes this better than just straight F&E. Let me just tell you a quick story. So I'm a big strategy game fan. I've played, from computer games, I've played Civilization, Masters of Orion, lots of RTS games from the original StarCraft to more recent ones. Right now, I'm in a turn-based squad-based game, the Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, which is a Warhammer 40K based game. But I love turn-based strategy games, or I love strategy games overall. From a tabletop perspective, I've played them from classic, like literally war games, sort of in the vein of Warhammer 40K, although I've never actually played the tabletop 40K. I've played different sort of World War II era tabletop war games with friends. I've played Risk, obviously, Axis and Allies, and of course, I once, when I was a young man, played Federation and Empire. The thing about these games is that they are very static, or at least these tabletop games can be very static. The thing I like the most about these games, and the thing I found out when I played not recently, but before COVID, the Game of Thrones 2nd edition tabletop game, is that, yes, you can have these battles, and in that game you have Risk-style fights between units. But it's not the fights, it's the table talk and the role play and the discourse between players that makes it fun. In Game of Thrones, by example, you never really have enough units to sort of take everybody out. But it's all about finding a moment, a time, a second to catch your opponents off guard. Tell them you're doing one thing and do something else, or find a way to deceive them. And that was what made that game, and what does make that game so much fun. I like doing that in Risk. I like playing Risk in a dynamic sort of evolving way. It's not just me versus you. It's about creating alliances and coalitions and trying to work together to accomplish something. And if you play Mission Risk, you're doing it to be able to accomplish maybe the mission card that you have. So how does that relate to this game? In traditional Federation Empire, again, it's that static tabletop game. And yes, it's dynamic enough, and there are lots of elements involved in this game, so it can be fun. But at the end of the day, it's the Klingons versus the Federation, or the Romulans versus the Federation, the Gorn. Like, the factions are the factions, and the maps are set. But in this game, and the thing I like about games like Civilization, why Civilization in all its iterations is so replayable, is because every time you start it, it's new. You explore, expand, and exploit resources as you go out. You bump into folks, and then you eliminate them or not. And from a player-on-player perspective, not necessarily straight-up AI, the dynamic that you have between different players is what really drives that fun part for me. The fact that the Carnarvon player, Terry, decided to, out of nowhere, backstab me and attack me while I was being occupied with the Romulans. That was awesome. That was amazing. That was exactly the kind of stuff that makes this game so fun. Not so great for me, but nonetheless fun. The dynamic going back and forth and sort of understanding the role-playing relationship that I was having at that time with the Gorn and the Romulans, trying to resolve that situation, and then trying to plan and think about how I was going to deal with the Carnarvons, and then how that dynamic played out between the Hydrons and the ISC, and how the Hydrons got the Carnarvons obviously involved in that war, and the Remans getting involved, and all this dynamic stuff. The player interaction is the magic, the secret sauce that makes an iteration of a game like this so much fun. And that's why I love playing them. So if you enjoy doing stuff like that, if you enjoy player-on-player interaction, and at the same time, you just enjoy being able to pound out turn-based warfare in a strategy game that's well laid out and a good structure of rules like Federation Empire is, then this is the game for you. Please don't be shy. Be like Zombie Tots Eater here and hit that subscribe button with a little notification so you know when we're going live. Tell me what you think about that new trailer that I dropped that's now sort of the intro for our live streams. Do you want to see more of that kind of stuff? And are you interested and excited about the next iteration of this game that's coming? I can say that we have updates to Vassal that are coming, new module features that are going to be introduced, and there's going to be like a new campaign, new way of playing, sort of, that's coming. Now, that's all sort of in development, and the work on Vassal is sort of significant, so that's why it's taking a little bit longer. But when that game rolls out, and we are able to pull in some other players, very exciting. Some of you who already support us on Patreon and or Coffee already know about this game and have already sort of secured your spot. If you are interested in playing in the next campaign, then please consider letting us know. Let us know on Facebook. And if you are a supporter on Coffee and or Patreon, then you will be the first to jump in on such a new campaign. But I will, don't forget to like today. Eugene, thank you for reminding me. Yes, we are currently at 9 likes now. Granted, we had a peak concurrent viewership of 12, double digits. We're a little bit below that right now. But if you've liked this video so far and you've been able to last till the very end, which is at the 2-hour mark here, then please hit that like button. Tell us you like us. Tell us that you like what we're doing. And I will see you next week on the live stream. So, with that said, bye for now. For all of you who are in our Discord, I'll see you there in a minute. If you're not already part of the Discord, consider hitting that Coffee and or Patreon link to join us in the chat after this live stream, because we go back and forth banter and talk about all things rules and, like to poke some fun at each other. And, people are discussing about what it is that Tony's actually doing. You want to be part of that discussion? Join us on Discord. It's fun, it's exciting, and it's part of our community of players to be able to have fun and enjoy games like this. Love to see you there. I will see you next week. Bye for now.